by myself tonight, and I'm not going to take calls. I've got a financial specialist calling in here from Atlanta. We're going to talk about this budget we've been talking about for days now. And I don't know if you saw the debate last night, but I was rather disappointed in it. And the questions were asked, like, for instance, why did you decide to run as an independent instead of a Republican? And I told them why. Actually, I had some people in that party that were writing things about me on the underground and calling me corrupt and things like that. And they set up an oversight committee to follow me around and watch me and take documentation. And I've provided 4 years of general fund ledger discs with every transaction on them, from every penny that came in and every penny that went out. So it's not like I didn't give them what they needed. Or at least I didn't think that I failed to give them anything that they needed. But they said that it was because I would not do a line item budget and because I wouldn't give quarterly financial statements that the law requires. The law does not require that. And I believe I told them last night that OCGA Code Section 36-1-6 tells you what to do, and it says nothing about quarterly reports, and it says nothing about putting them on the internet. And so I am following the law. But the reason that I haven't done a line item budget, which is what they've been asking for, is because my CPA doesn't want to do it, and he says that that's not what the state recommends, and he's doing what the state recommends. I don't really care. I have been to budget hearings where they put out a line item budget, and most people can't find anything in it. It's about 300 pages long, and unless you know all the codes, you don't know what you're looking for. And I think maybe that if you know that we'll do it and we lay it out there, you look at it one time, you probably don't look at it again. But at least you're comfortable knowing that you do it. I really don't mind to do it. And I think it's just one of those things that they didn't really like me, and they wanted me to do something that I had said I wasn't going to do. And that's all right. It's okay, because if they had another candidate they'd rather have, they should have them. But I don't think you should have to follow what the party tells you to do in order to be a member of that party. I might be wrong. What I'm seeing going on right now in the presidential election has shocked me. That they're not going to support Trump, for instance, because he's not doing what the party wants him to, or the party is, I guess Miss Hillary's doing what the party wants her to, because they're certainly backing her to the hilt. But anyway, I didn't know that you had to completely conform. If I follow their same principles. I believe that the party line is the right way to go. And I didn't know I had to be anything else. I've been a loyal party member for 16 years. And until lately, as a matter of fact, I'm still sitting here as a Republican. And if I run and win again, then I won't be a Republican commissioner. But I just wanted you to know that. And the Water Authority loan. We've been doing these things since 2011, and they're in the audit. I don't know why nobody saw it in the audit or thought that it was something unusual. It's a matter of investing money, and when the Water Authority puts it in a CD and it draws less than 1% interest, and we will pay them a little more than that, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to go before the board to do that unless you're spending money or you're bringing in money. But if you're just investing money, that's not a requirement that you take it through the board. But anybody that looks at the audits can see it, and I don't know how they've missed it. But I've got Tyler Jett calling all day trying to get in touch with me, and I really want to talk to him because he's just trying to sensationalize something he can against me, and he's been doing it for years now. And I don't care. So, with reference to purchasing anything, actually, if you are a county commissioner, the law still says that you can only take the salary that the legislature sets for you, and you can't buy or sell anything to the county. I don't care how much lower your bid is than anybody's. you cannot do that. Now, my opponent says that he's got a legal opinion that says if he's low bid, he can do it. But I just read the law on it today, and he cannot. He did sell diesel to the city, and it was not a lot. It wasn't a lot, and there wasn't a big deal about it. But I don't think he's supposed to, because even the appearance of impropriety is frowned on, and so all without saying throw the first stone. And so nobody's perfect. Let me say that I have had a terrible time keeping this thing going without raising your taxes. And I've done it. And I've done it because I knew you were having a hard time. And I never wanted to do it at all. And when I did it, it's because I absolutely had to. And why did I have to? I had to because the money wasn't coming in. And I think that I've talked to you about the 5-year history and showed you where a mill didn't bring in as much as it had in the past, and told you why. Because the auto tags are not bringing in the kind of money that they did a few years ago, and the exemptions are much higher than they used to be. And so I sit on the DCA board, Georgia Department of Community Affairs, and the governors, both Perdue and Deal, have sent down an order to send them back 3% and 5% across the board reductions, and they did do that. So you can do that. But when they do that, it transfers cost back to county government. So every time they cut their cost, it increases ours. And so I thought I'd let you know that I serve you. I'm on your side. I've done everything I can to protect you and to keep your taxes as low as they could be, and to keep your services as high as I can make them. And so tonight I've got a financial specialist from Atlanta. He's going to call me here, and that's why I'm not going to take any calls. We're going to go over these budgets and this debt, and he's going to tell you, he's looked at it. We're going to discuss it on the phone so you can hear it. So I'm expecting his call any minute. His name is Bill Cox, and so I tried last night desperately to talk about the debt from my perspective, and I never got the chance to even get through it. So I thought maybe since this is my hour, I can do it. If I can find it. I've got a few papers here. Here it is. Here's my piece. It's very short. Here it is. Hello, caller. Go ahead. Is this Bill Cox? I'm good, Bill. Let's see if I can turn this up where people can hear you. Can you help me? Huh? Okay, here's what I got to do is hang it back up. I shouldn't have picked it up. Now talk. Did I hang up on you? I'll be darned. Hello? No, I'm not getting to where you can hear. Now, let me hang it up and see if you can hear me now, or if I can hear you. Okay, now let's hear you.
All right, can you hear me?
I hear you. Okay, that's good.
All right, where do you want to start with these things?
Well, I'd like to talk about Walker County's perspective on the debt. Our SPLOST debt, according to our auditor, is $22,115,000. And that that SPLOST is what we voted on and passed in 2013. And we've used that money for the things that we said we would use them on. Then,
okay, well, go ahead.
Then the capital leases are $3.9 million, and therefore equipment purchases that we've made on a short-term basis. The capital lease for the sheriff's cars is $300,000, And I will explain why he didn't have enough splosh to finish buying his cars. And I put another $300,000 in his budget if he wants to use that to pay these off. And I suppose he'd rather have it for something else and let us pay it off over time like we're doing other things. This bank, Stearns Bank lease purchase, $800,000. It's paid from the general fund, from the savings, and from the utilities and the furnishings that we received, about $300,000 worth free of charge. And then the other $100,000 was to do the renovations. We financed it through the Stearns Bank to get the best deal that we could, and it's working very well. Everybody seems to be happy about it. The new tax anticipation note is because we ran short of money and we had to borrow $5 million to keep the county going until we can pay it back at the end of the year, which is a requirement. The landfill expansion. Our C&D is almost full. We're expanding that C&D to last another 23 years, because if we don't, we're going to start piling up stuff, and we have to do this. And so we think very soon that EPD will give us a permit to operate it, and we'll finish it. But the line of credit is about $400,000. We can pull up to $800,000 on a maximum credit line for part of the product, and $200,000 is the maximum credit line for a separate part of the project. So the total amount that I just gave you is $32,555,000, and the debt that you voted on, which is the SPLOST debt, which will be paid back by the SPLOST funds at the end of the SPLOST term, which is 2019. The net balance on that is $10,440,000. That is not a high debt. Now, I think there are other people and other things that believe we've got more than that, and that's what we'd like to talk about right now. You have.
Let me give you a rundown here real quick, not to interrupt you.
Okay.
With this stuff. For one, the $22 million SPLOST is the 1% sales tax that the citizens voted on.
Yes.
So that's going to be paid, period. It's already set in place. So it would be theoretically deducted from the debt. Even though you owe it, you have a guaranteed revenue stream to cover that. The capital leases of $3,511,000 is in fact less than the money that Mr. Whitfield claimed in his flyer. As a matter of fact, it was about half taken into account for inflation. In Mr. Whitfield's flyer, he claimed when you come into office, there was $4,941,000 in capital leases. So basically, he's saying that you've incurred additional capital lease debt, which is not the case, because you've actually cut the capital leases by $1.4 million. Now, we all know inflation come into play here, and inflation is roughly 41% over those years, and that would really put the debt, the projected capital leases, at about $6 million. So in essence, you cut your capital leases based on inflation in half. Okay, now another thing we have here is the pension liability, which that's a number that's based upon several projections. One is it's the age of the employees, how long they're going to be working, the projected salary, and that would be the maximum the county would owe if every single employee that's on this pension retired today. That is not even realistic. That's nothing more than an actuarial number that may never come to pass. The landfill number, I noticed that you mentioned the landfill. There is a $4 million guarantee to the state. I've reviewed these guarantees. I've actually pulled the EPD file, and basically what you're doing there is you're saying that you're going to spend over the next 30 years $4 million on the closure of that landfill. That doesn't mean that you're going to spend it now or even in the next 5 years. It means that the state tells you they think it'll take $4 million to get you through your complete obligation on the landfill. Therefore, they've told you, or you've been required to put that on your financial statement. Again, that's a number that may never come to pass. As a matter of fact, it's most likely not going to come to pass. Then you have the $800,000 for the expansion, which you had told me that you owe $400,000 on. But the interesting thing about that is the interest rate is 3.03%, and considering the CPI is close to 2%, you're basically getting that money for free. They're almost giving you that money simply as a government service. The problem with the landfill is, for the public, if you don't have that landfill, if you don't spend that $800,000 and keep that landfill open, in about 7 days after its closure, you're going to have a complete chaos. It's going to be a complete public health hazard. So you have to spend that money, and to be honest, that is probably the most intelligent, the best way to go about getting it is with a 3% loan from the state. You're not going to get it that cheap anywhere else. Now, one of the things I want to point out, and then I'll let you speak, is Mr. Whitfield, in his PowerPoint I'm looking at here, claims that the county has $14,215,524 in accounts payables as of September the 30th of 2015. Now, the audited financial statements clearly, it's clear they say $2,024,449. People can pull this up on the state website. They don't have to get this from you. But it's apparent that there's one or two things happening here with these documents that have been produced by your opponent. And either one, he does not understand accounting. He doesn't know how to count money, and he don't really know what he's doing. Or two, he's just blatantly lying to the public, because it's real simple. There's just not $14 million in accounts payable at this time, and I don't know, I look back over some previous audits, the county's never had $14 million in accounts payables. So, my question would be, on these documents from him, and we'll go through them if you want to, if this number is wrong, and he don't know how to add this number, then you have to question whether every other number this gentleman's given out isn't just completely wrong. And it leads to either one or two things: his credence and his credibility, or his confidence. But either one, you don't want someone handling these kind of dollars that's either incompetent or not credible. But at any rate, if you want to talk about some other things, I'll be glad to give you an opinion.
All right, now the next page on this summary of additional new liabilities for Walker County taxpayers says a 20-year tax bond to pay the Regions Bank from the industrial park, and that $15.3 million is covered by a mill of taxes, and it is the debt of the Walker County Development Authority, separate from Walker County, just like the school board's taxes are separate from or millage is separate from the counties. Although the people have to pay it, and they get it on the same bill, it's a separate bill from the county governments.
Let me tell you how that works in some counties. Unfortunately, I looked at a residence tax bill today, and there wasn't a line item for that. But if you go on Google and you type in DeKalb County, Georgia, and just tax millage rate, and you type that in and you ask Google to pull you up the DeKalb County, Georgia tax millage rate, you can look at a sample tax card for a lot of counties in Georgia, and it'll go down and it'll tell you, like 3 mils for fire, 2 mils for police, and it lays out every single thing you're paying for. The tax bill that I looked at today did not do that. It just simply had fire, and then it had the schools, and then it had the county operations. And in fact, in DeKalb County and most other counties, the tax individual who sends out the tax bills, they will actually list that separately so that the residents know that this is what they're paying for. They're paying for this particular obligation, and it would say Development Authority 1 mil. Again, this mil is going to go into the county fund, and then it would go to the Development Authority or directly to the, I think it's U.S. Bank.
It is, the U.S.
If I
Bank.
remember correctly.
Uh-huh.
Now, I remember again from listening to the audio today of your opponent, he mentioned last night the bonding company. And maybe he misspoke, but the bonding company only comes into play if the county defaults. But considering that there's a 1% mill rate, that's virtually impossible. So either he doesn't understand the way bonds work and the way finances work and the way government finances work, or again, he's trying to deceive the public and make them believe that you're having to pay off a bad debt. There's so many people that misunderstand these finances when you go out and you issue a tax note or a SPLOST or whatever, and you get a bond. What happens is that you, as part of the loan, you pay a premium to a bonding company, and they get that money up front, and they're like a co-signer or a guarantor. And every municipal bond in existence that I know of has a bond. A municipal bond has a bonding company guaranteeing it. Every one of them. And then this goes to a bank, and the bank underwrites it. So they give you your money, they give the bonding company their money, and then they sell those bonds to other people. Those we call them muni bonds. So they'll sell those notes to other people. Those people will collect the interest as it's paid and the principal as it's paid. The guarantor, the bonding company, only comes into play if the county defaults. So for him to mention the bonding company, maybe he was confused, maybe he didn't understand, but this debt is a 1 mil debt that's paid to U.S. Bank by the Development Authority by way of this 1 mil.
That's correct. And that's a covered debt. The SPLOST is a covered debt. The landfill expansion is covered by we have raised the rates $1 on both the MSW and the C&D. So we raised each of them $1 to cover this cost. $1 a ton, I should say. So that's the remedy for this landfill expansion. The road money misused from SPLOST and spent on the industrial park. I need to explain two things. Number one, what a 6-year SPLOST referendum is and what the money spent in the industrial park was spent for. You cannot leverage the $9.1 million against the states, whatever they provide. They send you the amount of money that they allow you because of the number of road miles that you have in your county. And then you take that amount and you figure out how you're going to get 30%. You don't have to get it from SPLOST. You can get it from general fund. And the money that we have been discussing was put, that money from the LMIG money that we had to match with 30% was accidentally put in the general fund by the county clerk, not knowing that it was expected of her to put it in the SPLOST. But since we didn't use SPLOST funds to match it, I don't think we should have been dinged for it. But they did ding us, and that's all they did. They're not going to do anything else. But if I hear one more time I broke the law, I may just be a little sick. But I haven't challenged that, but I think I probably could. But this $9.1 million went into the roads in the industrial park. And why is that? Because we never expected to have Audia come in and invest $140 million. They've asked us to give them, to reserve, they've got 25 acres, and they've asked us to reserve them 50 more, which means they're going to build 2 more plants. That's a $210 million investment in Walker County for good jobs, and I think it's worth it, but we had to hurry. We thought the county could slowly build this, and since we could not, and we allowed $4.5 million to buy it, which is a bargain, and then we allowed about $2.5 million to go in and just put a small road and put a sign up, and then start slowly working on it. We also expected that Appalachian Regional Commission to pay for the utilities going into the park, but they did not, which is unusual. So we put $1 million into the railroad. But Audia spent most of the money on the railroad because they built the scales for the trucks and the scales for the rail, and they belong to Audia, but they've said anybody in the park can use them. And we've also got the lowest rate for electricity anywhere in the region. So it's very much in demand, and probably if you wanted to sell the 388 acres that are about, you could probably get $35-40 million for it and pay off this 20-year tax bond with that. At this time, we don't have it ready to sell, but we're slowly working on it. But the $9.1 million went for roads that are county roads that are in the park. And yes, I'd give anything to have spent $9.1 million on roads, on Walker County roads. But since I needed this park right then, and we can do the roads a little later, everybody's roads are in bad shape anyway, we went ahead and did that, and that's what it took, plus the bond to finish up everything that we had done. And if you don't like what I did now, you will later, because our unemployment rate is about 4.6%, which is considered full employment.
Well, I'd like to interrupt you.
Okay.
About this industrial part, not to really interrupt you, but something people need to understand. You'd asked me to do some research about some other industrial sites with rail, and I look back at some sites for Norfolk Southern, BNSF, Union Pacific, and, here's an example, just one example is, there's an industrial park that got 27.53 acres with the rail spur outside of Jacksonville, Florida. Even though Jacksonville is a bigger city, it's similar to Chattanooga. This is in the outline area. It's 100,000 an acre.
100,000.
Another site, 100,000 an acre. That would put you at about $38 million just in an industrial park value. Now, there's another one here for $80,000 an acre. That's a 90-acre site that's on a rail spur by Norfolk Southern. There's another one that is a little more similar. It's up in Muncie, Indiana, which is a small town, in fact. They're looking at about $110,000 an acre there. You got one in Taylor, Michigan, which is definitely an economically depressed area that is about $60,000 an acre. So to say $30,000 an acre, you're probably being conservative at this point, or whatever. You're just the number you gave is probably a conservative number.
Well, I don't doubt, but that the property is appreciating because of what's going on around us. For instance, Volkswagen. I know that when that happened, a lot of people didn't like the idea of it, but it's been a real plus for our community, our city, and Walker County is better for it as well. So I'm really glad they've done it.
Remember about Volkswagen, and again, I don't mean to talk over you, but when somebody gets me to talk, and I love talking.
Go right ahead.
And you got to remember, Volkswagen, the state spent several $100 million building that plant. And then or not building the plant, they were getting it ready. They built that exit, they did all this work. And then they were going to have Toyota come in, and they really believed that they were going to get Toyota. And Toyota decided to go to Mississippi. And then all of a sudden, everybody decided that facility was a boondoggle. It was in a meeting and everything. They spent all these hundreds of millions of dollars, and they got nothing for it. They didn't get the plant, so on and so forth. Then, of course, ultimately, Toyota didn't build in Mississippi. They started the construction, and they stopped it, and they recently went back and completed it. And just in the last year or two have been employing people. Chattanooga ultimately got the better of the deal. They ended up at VW, and now it's considered a premium facility, and everybody's bragging about how great the city and the state did on this particular development. Well, this is a similar example. When you build these type of developments, if you're thinking it's going to be successful the first 5 or 10 years, then you better not build it. I mean, there's one in Tooler, Georgia, that the state's been sitting on a good while, and it's not been used yet. I mean, you can look at all of these different places, and these things will pay off in 10, 20 years, but they're not going to pay off the first year or 5 years. It's just not feasible. So what you did there is a very long-term investment for the county. And I would venture to say, based on you'll be long gone, and people will still be benefit from it, and they'll be looking back, saying, "Well, that was a better idea than we thought."
I know that it is. Sometimes you just know, and I know I did the right thing, and I hope someday people will understand that I did. And if we hadn't done it when we did, we wouldn't have gotten what we got. And our investors here are spectacular. And they're an American company, one of the few left, and we're very proud to have them here.
Well, one of the things you need to think about is people always complain about the person that's doing something. The person that's doing something is always doing something wrong. They're the ones that make the mistake. Well, that's because they're actually doing something. Because the truth of the matter is the guy that's sitting over here in an office, and all he does is sit in front of a computer and poke some numbers and send 8 or 10 or 12 people out and play with daddy or mama's money. He's not really doing anything. He's just riding on somebody's coattails. I mean, when you got someone out there physically trying to make things happen, people are going to be mad at them. They're going to question them, and they're going to make mistakes because, in fact, they are doing something. And I've always lived by a theory. If I make 100 decisions and 70 of them are right, then I'll deduct the 30 bad decisions from the 70 right ones. I got 40 good decisions, and I'm ahead of the game. So, one of the things that, and this is kind of off the subject of what you asked me to look at, one of the things people need to look at is if you're doing something, then at least you're trying to make a genuine effort, and that's better than running around, complaining about somebody that's doing something and constantly beating on them and, creating fictitious numbers. Now, I did some Facebook research and followed up on it, read some things, and what's flabbergasting is that you got one opponent of yours that said next to nothing. And then you got this other opponent that has constantly put out bad numbers, constantly badmouthed you. And these numbers are so far off from the audits, from everything that I've gathered, that they're just completely and totally unreliable. Now, I did look at the audio, or listen to audio rather, from last night, and, the one thing that caught my mind, or caught my attention more than anything else, was the gentleman named Mr. Lamb was sitting in between, I guess, you and
Mr. Whitfield.
Mr. Whitfield. Mm-hmm. He was sitting between you guys, and Mr. Whitfield starts talking about him making rookie mistakes because he wants to save the county 10% or whatever, cut 10% off the budget. Well, to-dos to Mr. Lamb for wanting to cut 10% off the budget, and, shame on the guy that says you're just making a rookie mistake, because from what I've gathered, the gentleman, Mr. Whitfield, running, from what I've gathered, what I've done the research on him, he had a tire store that's no longer, and then he's been a CFO of a company his father started in 76. So he has never held a public office with the exception of a couple of years with the city of Chickamauga. So he don't really have a lot of experience either. So, you have just sheer and utter arrogance with someone calling another person rookie mistake. I mean, that's just not true leadership. Putting these bad numbers out are not true leadership. I don't know. I mean, I looked at these numbers for hours on end. I spent 6 hours a day going through them. And I'll be honest with you, I'm just totally flabbergasted at how far off they are.
We've got this unpaid Georgia EPD fine. It's going to stay unpaid. They're not asking me to pay it. They know that I have documentation to prove that we finished this project 40 days early, and I don't think I'll ever have a problem with it. The federal court judgment to Erlanger is up in the air. I don't know how it's going to end. I do think we need to make every effort to help those people that lost all that money, and if we can, I want to do it. If not, we can make arrangements to pay Erlanger. I don't know whether Kevin Spiegel's going to leave, and I don't even know whether I'm going to leave. But if it's possible to get this into a court where both sides can actually be heard, I think we'll do all right. It's one thing that when I talk to people, when I first tell them, they said, pay it before you have to pay more. But when I finish telling them the details, they say, fight it. Those people deserve it. So I'm still kind of up in the air about this, and I've never really heard enough from my community to know what they actually want me to do. The TAN, of course, we know what it is. The lease purchase for the sheriff's cars, we know what that is, and those are accurate. The $10 million is not accurate. It's 8.7, and yes, I don't know what it's going to end up being, and I wish that somebody could tell me exactly what I need to do with that, but so far they haven't been able to. But when I look at this current debt of $79.581722 million, I think that's awful, and it's not possible. I haven't been here long enough to run a debt that high.
Now let me mention a couple things to you that I did research today. On this EPD fine, I really can't say a whole lot about it because I don't know all the complete background. But I do know this much, that EPD and OSHA, generally speaking, they fine people not because they want to collect the money, but because they want to keep making it look like they're doing their job. If they don't fine somebody, then what's the use in them being there?
I thought it was to pay their salary.
No, not at all. It's just simply so that they can say to the higher-ups, we're doing our jobs. Almost every EPD fine and OSHA fine in existence is generally negotiated down to an end payment of about 5 to 10 cents on the dollar. They really don't. The fines are nothing more than a mechanism to show that they're taking enforcement action. On the $10 million, there's a system, and you are going to have to pay to subscribe to it. You can use a credit card. It's called PACER, PACER.gov. And I subscribe to that, so I look at it for various reasons. And I did look up the Erlanger case, and the judgment was for $8.7 million. But again, not $10 million. So you got a number here that's just blatantly wrong. Now, there could be some interest added, but historically, based on my experience, a judgment is not what somebody's going to get, and it's sure not what they're going to agree to settle for. You know, typically you can settle a judgment for less than the judgment amount. And under the federal, I believe it's a federal, well, it was because it was PACER, the judgment is under the federal discount rate. So basically the interest rate on that judgment is about 2% a year. So in essence, you would be a fool to pay them the $8.7 million a day before you actually had to, because if you went to replace that money, you would pay more than 2% interest. It would cost you more interest to borrow it and pay them than it would be to just let it flow. And as far as that's concerned, you really would be better off to enter a payment plan with them if you did have to pay it, because they can't collect any more than the federal judgment rate, which is about 2% right now. So even if you did have to pay the $8.7 million, my recommendation would be to cut a deal with them and pay them no interest, or pay them the federal judgment rate, which is peanuts. I sure wouldn't go hand them $8.7 million all at once. That would just be foolish.
I can't do that if I had it. I mean, I don't have it to do with.
Even if you had it, it'd be foolish.
Well, I agree. I would want, if I had that much money, I'd rather put it in reserve and pay them like we're talking about.
I mean, the thing is you got some other debt here that's, peanuts, as far as the interest rates. As a matter of fact, most of this interest rate's fairly low, but none of it's as low as the federal discount rate. So it's kind of like credit card. You'd pay the highest interest rate loan first. You'd pay if you're an individual, you'd pay the highest interest rate first. You're sure not going to pay the lowest interest rate first. But neither here nor there. The $10 million is it's a deceptive number because that's not the number that's on the judgment. And if anybody wants to look, PACER.gov, use their credit card. They charge 8 cents a page. You can go online. You can enter the name of the plaintiff or the name of the defendant. It'll pull it up. Or the Northern District of Georgia in Rome, and it'll pull it up. You can look at every bit of that case. It's public record.
Well, thank you for that, because you're very knowledgeable about not just finances, but all these other things too. Let me see here. The Board of Commissioners, that was brought up to me last night, and I don't know. I know that we had a very small percentage of the registered voters. I think 4,400, a little over 4,400 voted that they'd like to have a referendum for a multi-member commission. Now, in a general election, I don't know how that would turn out. I think it should be held in a general election so everybody that gets up and goes to vote can vote one way or another. I know a lot of people that can't bear the idea of going to a multi-member commission. And I think that this commission has worked well for us. I don't think it has anything to do with transparency. I have taken hours and hours and hours of ethics training at DCA through Kennesaw State University. I do understand ethics. I do understand transparency. I do know how to do it, and I do it. And I'm sorry if people think I'm trying to hide anything. I really don't have a reason to. You already know that the county's not a rich county, it's a poor county, and it always has been. And we've never had a reserve. And the counties that do have a reserve are getting our sales tax because that's where we go to buy. And that's because we need some more things to buy. And as we bring in more industry and bring in more homes and begin to look like we can afford what people will come and sell, maybe they'll come and do a tourism type retail business here, since we have probably the prettiest county in the state of Georgia. I might be prejudiced, but it really is pretty. And I think that we have a good future ahead. I really do. And I hope that you do too. I don't think we're going to go backwards, and I don't think that we're going to go broke. I think that maybe we've seen a little exaggeration because they'd like to do the job, or a little scare tactic. The scariest thing I know is the safety of this. We live in a dangerous world, and I'm working really hard to try to keep everything as safe as possible, as well as the sheriff is. We're working closely together, pretty much so, in order to keep Walker County safe. Chattanooga's not so safe anymore, and so we don't want them to drift over here, and you never know when that's going to happen. But I want every facility. Our ambulance service is as good as we can possibly get. They can have 60 ambulances in Walker County in 1 hour. The people that live on the mountain, we've got Puckett on each side, and therefore they can have twice the opportunity to get service quickly. And so I think we're doing a lot of things right, and I hope you do too. I know you've heard that I'm doing everything wrong, and sometimes I wonder if that's true, but I actually know that it isn't. And experience does matter, because I hear people tell you things all the time that I know better. I know better because I've done it. And people that are doing accounting are not doing government accounting, and it is a whole lot different. And you had called my attention to something today, that you said that a landfill, that's a private one, can pay a manager a certain amount and then hire people and not pay them all the benefits that a county government is required to do. So we can't make the kind of money that they can make in a private landfill simply because we don't have the authority to.
That's correct. To give you a better understanding of how that works, private businesses get classify employees. So let's say you have management, you can pay them salary. And starting January the 1st, they have to make at least $44,000 a year. But management can have one set of benefits, and then you can have hourly employees, and they get to have a totally different set of benefits or no benefits at all. You can eliminate all benefits for hourly employees. Government, however, has to provide across the board the same benefits to every single employee. And that, along with Obamacare, will run the cost of your employee benefits, completely out the roof. As a matter of fact, I've seen instances where people's employee benefits are 50% of their payroll. And 15 years ago, employee benefits were about 20% of payroll. So, when you think about it, you pay a guy $15 an hour, you're having to give $7.50 per hour in additional benefits to include Obamacare. Unfortunately, Georgia did not take Obamacare. They are part of the Obamacare, but they didn't take the expanded version. And basically what the expanded version did is everybody that made less than the national poverty level would basically receive the health benefits for free with no deductibles or copays. It was kind of an expanded Medicaid type deal. But with Georgia, because they didn't accept it, the individuals or the employers have to absorb every bit of that money. For instance, Kentucky did accept and go to the expanded program. So if you're working 20 people and they're making less than the national poverty level, the government pays their health care on their behalf. They give it to the state, and then the state pays on their behalf. In Georgia, that don't happen. So what you're doing is these employees in Georgia that you're paying benefits are in fact covering the expenses for people in Kentucky. And it's socialized medicine in its worst form. And unfortunately, it is eating employers and county governments alive. And there's just no way around it. And unless it's changed, it's not going to get any better.
Well, it's hurt. It's really taken its toll on Walker County's finances for health benefits. They're tough.
Well, another thing, people need to understand is these, according to what I'm seeing here, there's $107 million in assets. That's
what the auditor is telling me.
That's right. But he's saying that you have $107 million worth of assets. And this is an audit. And you have $53 million in the debt on the audit. Now, again, this audit includes these other loans that are paid with tax dollars. Because of the generally acceptable accounting practices, you don't get to put in the value of a piece of property after you develop it. You only get to enter in the asset, the amount you paid for it. So like the industrial park, if you paid $10,000 an acre, somewhere in these numbers, this depreciable assets, this $77 million number, that's what you paid for that park. It's somewhere in there. But all of those improvements and everything else, unless they were booked, and all the goodwill is not there. So let's say you paid $4 million, I don't know what you paid for it, and then you spent $10 million, then you might have it booked at $14 million. But if it's worth $30 million, that other $16 million is not listed in your financial statement. It's considered blue sky. So, if you look at this number, the $53 million, that's the total debt of everything, not including the school board. You look at the $107 million, then you have about a 50% debt to equity. So you owe about 50% of your assets after depreciation. So I did look back at a couple, 3 or 4 other years, and it's fairly close to the same. It's a little bit more, but if you took out the $22 million for the SPLOST money, in fact, the debt compared to the assets are less than they were several years ago. So that expansion at the industrial park, which is a long-term expansion, has shifted the numbers some.
Well, we're getting better all the time. I think we're paying down our debt. And it's not been a really huge debt compared to other cities and counties in the state of Georgia, actually. But it's going to take a little while to recover because, we've been through a recession that's second only to the Great Depression, and it hit everybody. And I'm thankful that we've got people with jobs here. But you know, we've got $107 million in assets. Now the Walker County Development Authority's got about $45 million at least, minimum, in assets. So they can borrow money on their own, can't they?
Well, yeah, but those assets, the Development Authority's assets are not in this financial, but because the county is ultimately responsible for the debt, then a lot of that debt is in there, that $22 million and the $3 million. So, you know, that's just the way that they require you to account. Another thing I noticed in these documents you gave me was an allegation that you had not been providing financial statements as required by law. And I did look that up, and I'm not going to go to the trouble of quoting the exact everything about it because it's quite long. But the crux of the law is pretty simple. A copy of this statement shall also be posted twice each year for a period of no less than 30 days on the bulletin boards of various county courthouses. So the argument or the accusation that the balance sheets or the financials are supposed to be produced quarterly is inaccurate. The last time I've seen quarterly balance sheets or financial statements has been about 20, maybe even 30 years ago. They were very popular in the up until the 90s, and a lot of the county practices went to either monthly or some people just do them yearly. But
I used to actually do the county's quarterly reports, so I know how to do them. But it'd take a whole newspaper now because there's so much more than there was back when I did those. We also used to do a tax levy, like you were talking about on a tax notice, and you could take that with you wherever you went to talk to people and hand it to them, and they could tell you exactly what the millage rate was for that department or for that particular levy and how much it was estimated to raise. And I think those are good things that they've done away with to help people understand what's going on.
Well, these financial statements, financial statements very detailed, and this financial statement for Walker County has 97 line items. So, you know, and it consists of about 5 or 6 pages. Now, you know, obviously that would be extremely expensive to post that entire financial statement in the newspaper. But when a gentleman or anyone tries to combine or condense a financial statement into about 10 to 15 line items and tell you they know what they're talking about or their numbers are accurate, it's just impossible. I mean, you're basically trying to condense every little thing that by law is required to be accounted for into a couple of 3 PowerPoint pages that have maybe 15 tops line items. And so what you're doing is you're condensing all these items together that really are not relevant, or else they're not supposed to go together. You know, for a general acceptable county practices, you're combining these numbers, and what you're doing that for, generally speaking, is to do one of two. It's called a P&L statement. It's called pretend and lie. And you're pretending and you're lying. And so when you condense them to create pro forma financial statements, you're producing pretend and lie statements. And basically what you have here is 14 or 15 line items that are pretend and lie items. That's exactly, I mean, that's the crux of it. And you can go to any accounting school, and if you tell the first year, if you tell the teacher or the professor the P&L is a pretend and lie statement, they'll let you leave the class because you already learned the first year's worth of.
Let me tell you that I've got 4 minutes till we close, and so I want to thank you so much for calling and talking to us about what this all means, because I don't think anybody really knew, and I'm not as knowledgeable about accounting as I ought to be, but I'm certainly not as knowledgeable as you are, and I appreciate you taking the time to go over everything that we have provided for you and calling and talking to us. I hope the people could hear you because it was worth listening to. Thank you so much for calling.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay. Well, I think they're ready for me to leave, and I hope you could hear this because he is on target, and I really appreciate, because I can't do everything that everybody can do, and because I'm not an accountant and I've never pretended to be one. I can read an audit simply because I've been doing it for a long, long time, but it surely don't tell you everything you need to know. It's not as good as a financial statement, and it's only bottom line. You don't know what's happening in the middle. And so because of that, I provided him with this financial statement and all these other things that we've talked about, and asked him if he would call in. So I'd never done all that. I could never have told you all that stuff, though I'm glad that he did, and I hope you heard him, and I hope it enlightened you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Walker County Government. We will see you next week.
Experience in the business or professional world does not mean that a new county commissioner could successfully hit the ground running next January. No, being the chief executive of county government is a different game altogether. Profit is not the motive, but caring about the life and the future of your neighbors is. That's why the proven experience of Commissioner Bebe Heiskell is so important, and why Walker County needs to keep her on the job. Sure, anybody can cut services, but Bebe weighs each decision with a compassion for people that most would never consider. And she has invested in the future growth and development of our county. Already those investments are paying off in the lowest unemployment here in nearly a decade. Don't let the spin masters turn your head. Preserve our heritage for future generations while developing the jobs to keep them here. Vote for Bebe Heiskell, Walker County Commissioner, paid for by Heiskell for Commissioner.
This is Bebe Heiskell, and I approve this message.
Walker County needs a change. Seems we hear that every day this election year. Okay, let's look at Bebe Heiskell's record of accomplishments as our commissioner. She has assisted our cities with road work, athletic fields, walking tracks, parking areas, not to mention that Walker County 911 saves the cities thousands of dollars each year. Bebe has upgraded the county's codes enforcement, making our homes and businesses safer and causing the cleanup of dilapidated properties. During her terms, Walker County has added 1,800 fire hydrants. The fire service rating is near the best in the state, saving homeowners millions on insurance. More than 800 miles of roads have been paved during her 15 years on the job. And new industries with higher paying jobs have been attracted here, and existing industries have expanded. Which of these do you want to throw away? Experience matters. Let's keep Bebe Heiskell, paid for by Heiskell for Commissioner.
This is Bebe Heiskell, and I approve this message.